Welcome to the Southern Underworld. I'm Dakota, your guide through these twisted back roads of terror where Southern hospitality meets bone-deep dread. Whether you're here for blood-soaked deep dives or spine-tingling Southern Gothic tales, we've got your table ready. Fair warning, we don't pull punches down here. So settle in and remember, once you cross our threshold, there's no telling what's waiting in the dark. Tonight's descent begins now. I discovered her on a Tuesday. The glow from my triple monitor setup painted shadows across my apartment walls as I navigated through another sleepless night in Silicon Valley's digital underground. The coffee had long since turned cold beside my mechanical keyboard, but sleep remained a stranger. The algorithms I wrote during daylight hours paid my bills, but the darkness belonged to different pursuits. Joanne Winters. Her blog materialized on my screen like Providence. Urban dreams and digital nightmares. The header promised authenticity in a world drowning in manufactured content. Her photograph smiled back at me. Auburn hair catching afternoon sunlight, green eyes holding secrets I needed to unlock. I read her latest post 3 times before the obsession took root. Today, I watched a homeless man feed stray cats behind the coffee shop on Market Street. His gentleness reminded me that humanity persists in unexpected places. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness illuminate our darkest corners. The words carved themselves into my memory. Here was someone who understood the shadows, who saw beauty where others found decay. I bookmarked her site, then began my descent into her digital existence. Her Instagram revealed a pattern: morning runs through Golden Gate Park, afternoon writing sessions at Cafe Luna, evening photography walks through Soma. She documented her life with the casual precision of someone unaware she was creating a roadmap. I memorized her schedule within a week. Surveillance requires patience, preparation, and the right equipment. I invested in a telephoto lens, a nondescript sedan, and clothing that rendered me invisible among San Francisco's tech worker population. My coding skills proved invaluable for different reasons now. Every digital footprint Joanne left behind became another thread in the web I was weaving around her. Her phone number emerged from a cross-reference of public records and social media metadata. Her address followed through property tax databases and utility connection records. The modern world offered no true privacy to those who knew how to look. I began with text messages. "Your writing touches something deep. A devoted reader." She responded with polite gratitude, the kind writers offer strangers who reach out through public channels. I escalated gradually, testing boundaries with each interaction. "I saw you at Cafe Luna today. You were wearing the blue sweater. It complements your eyes perfectly." Her responses grew shorter, more cautious. I had crossed from admirer into stalker territory, but crossing lines had become my specialty. The physical surveillance started small. Brief glimpses during her morning runs, distant observations during her coffee shop sessions. My telephoto lens captured intimate moments. The way she tucked hair behind her ear when concentrating, how she smiled at her laptop screen when crafting the perfect sentence, the unconscious grace of her movements through familiar spaces. I developed the photographs in a makeshift darkroom I built in my apartment's walk-in closet. Film held permanence that digital files lacked, weight and substance I could touch when loneliness threatened to consume me entirely. My apartment transformed into a shrine dedicated to documenting Joanne's existence. The closet darkroom expanded to fill half my living space. Photographs covered every available surface. Joanne laughing at her laptop, Joanne feeding stray cats, Joanne walking through fog-shrouded streets with that unconscious grace I had fallen in love with. Her belongings began appearing alongside the photographs. A coffee cup she discarded at Cafe Luna. The pen she dropped outside her apartment building. hair collected from the salon she visited monthly. Each item represented a piece of her essence, fragments I could possess when the real woman remained beyond reach. 3 weeks into my campaign, I decided direct contact had become necessary. I knew her route home from the coffee shop, 8 blocks through increasingly deserted streets as evening approached. The alley between Market and Mission provided perfect concealment, deep enough for shadows, narrow enough to prevent escape. My heart hammered against my ribs as footsteps approached. Months of observation had taught me to recognize her gait, confident, purposeful, completely unaware of the predator waiting in darkness. She rounded the corner at exactly 6:47 p.m. Joanne. She spun toward my voice, a backpack clutched against her chest like armor. "Who's there?" I stepped from the shadows, my hands visible but ready. "I'm the one who's been writing to you." Recognition flickered across her face. Not of my identity, but of the danger she faced. Her muscles tensed for flight, but I had positioned myself between her and both exits. "What do you want?" Her voice carried forced steadiness, the kind writers develop when crafting brave characters. "To talk. To show you what we could have together." She backed against the alley wall, her eyes darting for escape routes that didn't exist. "I don't know you. Please let me go." The word "please" triggered something primal in my chest. She was begging, acknowledging my power over her fate. The sensation proved more intoxicating than any drug Silicon Valley's pharmaceutical underground could provide. "You know me better than you think." I moved closer, close enough to smell her shampoo, something floral and innocent. "I've been watching you work, watching you live. I know things about you that nobody else knows." "You're sick." The words came out as a whisper. "I'm devoted." The police investigation started after she missed 3 blog posts in a row. Her readers noticed first, then friends, then family members who hadn't heard from their reliable daughter in too many days. Missing person reports followed, then detectives with their methodical questions and suspicious eyes. I watched the search unfold from my apartment window. Patrol cars cruised past my building twice daily. Officers studying faces on sidewalks with the systematic attention law enforcement brought to manhunts. They found her purse in Golden Gate Park, then her phone in a dumpster behind Cafe Luna. The city held its breath as news vans arrived, and reporters transformed Joanne's disappearance into entertainment for people who had never read her words or understood her gentle vision of humanity persisting in darkness. Detective Patricia Wells knocked on my door at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday. I had been expecting this moment since the first news report, preparing responses to questions I knew were coming. My laptop held nothing incriminating. I had learned enough from crime documentaries to understand how digital forensics worked, but photographs proved harder to hide. "We'd like to ask you a few questions about Joanne Winters," Detective Wells said as she surveyed my apartment. Her eyes lingered on the walls where I had displayed my favorite shots of Joanne's daily routines. "I read her blog," I offered before she could ask. "Tragic what happened to her." "Happened?" Detective Wells moved closer to examine a particularly intimate photograph of Joanne writing in her journal. "We haven't determined what happened yet." "Mind explaining how you got these pictures?" The lie I had prepared crumbled under her steady gaze. Some deceptions require more skill than I possessed. "I was documenting street photography. She appeared in some shots." Street photography. She pulled out her phone and photographed my wall display with a telephoto lens. From inside buildings, capturing private moments. My hands began trembling before I could stop them. "We found your DNA on items near the abduction site," she continued. "We found your digital footprints in her email accounts. We found evidence that you've been stalking this woman for months." The apartment walls seemed to close around me as additional detectives entered through my front door. They moved with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this many times before, collecting evidence and destroying the shrine I had built to worship someone who would never love me back. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Joanne's family sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery, their grief a tangible presence that followed me through each day of testimony. Her mother looked like an older version of her daughter, carrying the same gentle strength that had first attracted me to Joanne's writing. They never found her body. The prosecution built their case on digital evidence, DNA traces, and witness testimony from people who had seen me following her through San Francisco streets. My defense attorney argued circumstantial evidence and reasonable doubt, but the photographs sealed my fate. No jury could look at those images and see anything other than a predator who had stalked an innocent woman until she vanished from the world. The verdict came back unanimous, guilty on all counts, 25 to life. They sentenced me on a Friday in October. Joanne's blog still exists, though she will never update it again. Her final post remains pinned at the top of the site. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness illuminate our darkest corners. Comments have poured in from around the world. Readers who found meaning in her words, writers inspired by her voice, strangers who felt less alone because she had shared her thoughts with the digital universe. I read every single comment from my prison cell. The other inmates know why I'm here. Child killers and rapists occupy the bottom tier of prison hierarchy, but men who make women disappear rank somewhere lower than that. I've learned to sleep with one eye open and eat only food I can see being prepared. But late at night, when the cell block falls quiet and moonlight filters through reinforced glass, I remember the sound of Joanne's voice when she whispered, "Please," in that alley. Some sounds follow you forever. Her blog counter shows 847,293 total views as of yesterday. Each number represents someone touched by her words, someone who found beauty in her perspective on a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving. I gave her immortality. She gave me something else entirely. The darkness I thought I understood proved deeper than any shadow I had ever hidden in, and some hunts end with the predator becoming the prey. But in the silence of my cell, surrounded by concrete and steel and the constant threat of violence from men who understand exactly what I am, I still remember the way afternoon light caught her auburn hair. Some obsessions burn forever. The earring fell from Dad's coat pocket like a guilty confession. Silver, tarnished, cheap as gas station jewelry, with a clasp that looked ready to snap. I held it up to the basement light, watching it catch the weak glow. Not mine. Mom had been dead 3 years, and she'd never owned anything this tacky. Dad worked nights at Millfield University, janitor, had been for 15 years, ever since the plant closed and took his real job with it. He'd come home at dawn smelling of industrial cleaner and exhaustion, sleep until 3, then disappear again into the dark. Rinse, repeat, the rhythm of our broken household. But lately, something had changed. The smell hit me first. Sharp, floral, wrong. It clung to his clothes like smoke, saturating the fabric with a sweetness that made my throat close. I'd catch whiffs of it in the hallway, in his bedroom, seeping through the walls of our small house like poison gas. Then came the newspaper clipping. I'd been hunting through the attic for Mom's Christmas decorations when I found it wedged behind a loose board. The paper was yellowed, brittle as old skin. The headline screamed in bold print, "Local woman still missing." Below it, a grainy photo of a redhead with kind eyes and a nervous smile. She looked like me. Same nose, same jawline, same way of tilting her head slightly to the left. Vanessa Hartwell, age 22. Last seen leaving her job at the campus bookstore. My hands shook as I read the date. 3 months ago. Right around the time Dad started coming home with that smell. I sat in the attic dust, holding that clipping, feeling the world tilt sideways. The woman in the photo stared back at me with dead eyes, and suddenly every late night, every strange smell, every moment of Dad's recent distance clicked into place like bullets sliding into a chamber. The next few days passed in a haze of paranoid observation. I watched him eat breakfast, searching his face for signs of the monster I now suspected lived beneath his skin. He looked the same. Gray stubble, tired eyes, hands calloused from years of manual labor. But the familiarity felt like camouflage now, a mask designed to fool his own daughter. I started leaving breadcrumbs. A missing person flyer on the kitchen counter. A news report about serial killers left playing on the living room TV. Each one a test, a probe to see if he'd flinch. He never did. But his smiles grew thinner, his eyes colder, like winter creeping in through cracks in the walls. On Thursday night, he was late. I sat in the kitchen, watching the clock tick past midnight, then 1, then 2. The house felt different when he wasn't there. Bigger, emptier, full of shadows that seemed to breathe. At 2:47 a.m., I heard his truck in the driveway. I listened to him come through the front door, heard his boots on the hardwood, the jingle of keys hitting the counter. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. But underneath them, I caught something else. A woman's voice, soft and pleading. My blood turned to ice water. The basement door creaked open. His footsteps descended, heavy and purposeful. Then silence. I waited 10 minutes, 20. When the house settled into its usual groaning quiet, I crept to the basement door and pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. The door was unlocked. It always was. Dad had no reason to keep secrets from his teenage daughter. Until now. The stairs descended into blackness. I'd avoided the basement for years, ever since Mom died and Dad claimed it as his workshop. The air down there was thick with the smell of bleach and something underneath it. Something organic, something wrong. I found the light switch and flicked it on. The single bulb cast harsh shadows across Dad's workbench, his tools, his neat rows of cleaning supplies. Everything looked normal, innocent. But at the far end of the room, past the water heater and the storage shelves, something glinted in the weak light. I moved closer. A table, folding metal, the kind you'd use for a garage sale. But this one was draped with a white sheet, and the sheet was stained with dark patches that looked black under the yellow bulb. The woman from the newspaper clipping lay beneath it. Her red hair fanned across the makeshift altar like spilled wine. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, glassy and empty. Around her neck, a silver chain held a pendant I recognized from the missing person photos. You always were too curious for your own good. I spun around. Dad stood at the bottom of the stairs, blocking my escape route. His face was calm, almost peaceful, like he'd finally stopped pretending. The smell, I whispered. Perfume, he said. She wore too much of it. They all do. My legs went weak. How many? Does it matter? I looked around desperately for a weapon. Dad's workbench held a dozen tools that could kill, but they were all behind him, past the wall of his body. The only thing within reach was an old tire iron leaning against the wall. I never wanted you to find out, he said, stepping closer. You look so much like them. Like her. He nodded toward the table. Same bone structure, same coloring. It's why I chose this house, you know, so you could grow up safe, protected. Protected from what? His smile was gentle, fatherly. From me. I lunged for the tire iron. Dad was faster than I expected for a man his age, but desperation made me quick. I swung the metal bar in a wide arc, catching him across the shoulder. He grunted and stumbled backward, and I ran for the stairs. He caught my ankle on the third step. We fell together, a tangle of limbs and fury. My head cracked against the concrete floor, and stars exploded behind my eyes. When my vision cleared, Dad was lying beside me, motionless. Blood pooled beneath his skull where it had struck the edge of the workbench. I scrambled away from him, my ankle screaming with pain. His eyes were open, but seeing nothing. Dead. The monster was dead. But the woman on the table was still dead too. I crawled up the stairs and called 911. The trial made national news. Janitor's daughter discovers father's secret life as serial killer. The reporters loved the angle. Innocent girl, trusted father, hidden basement of horrors. They found 7 bodies buried in the woods behind the university. 7 women who'd trusted a quiet man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. I moved away after the media circus died down, changed my name, started over. Built a life where nobody knew what my father had been, where the past couldn't follow me. For 5 years, it worked. Then came Easter Sunday in Riverside Park. I was watching the egg hunt, smiling at the children's laughter, when the sun caught something silver in the grass. An earring, tarnished and cheap, identical to the one I'd found in Dad's coat. I picked it up with trembling fingers. On the back, an inscription, "To my beloved daughter." The world went cold. There had been 2 earrings, a matched set, and one had been in Dad's pocket. A child screamed. I looked up to see a man emerging from the tree line, tall, thin, wearing a maintenance uniform. He carried a mop bucket in one hand and watched the scattered children with eyes I recognized. Dad's eyes. Same pale blue, same patient hunger. The man saw me staring and smiled. It was Dad's smile, too, gentle and terrible. "Hello, daughter," he called across the grass. "I've been looking for you." I ran. Behind me, the children's laughter turned to screams as parents snatched them up and fled. But I could hear his footsteps following, steady and unhurried, like he had all the time in the world, like he'd been patient before and could be patient again. The earring cut into my palm as I ran, its sharp edge drawing blood. 2 earrings, 2 monsters. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a terrible thought began to grow. What if there were more than 2? What if the night shift never really ended? And that's where we'll leave you tonight, alone in the dark with nothing but shadows for company. If you're brave enough to come back for more, make sure you're subscribed to the Southern Underworld Playcast. We've got fresh horrors crawling up from the depths every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Eastern, because the best scares don't wait for midnight. If tonight's story left you sleeping with the lights on, a 5-star review helps other thrill seekers find their way to our little corner of hell. Every review drags more souls into our twisted family. Before you venture back into the night, our sincerest gratitude to the dark storytellers who craft these nightmares. All stories featured on the Southern Underworld Playcast are the copyrighted works of their respective authors and are shared with permission. You can discover more of their bone-chilling tales and support these masters of the macabre through the links in our show notes. So until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights burning, and remember, in the South, some things are better left undisturbed. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them. Copyright 2025 Dakota for Southern Underworld Press.